So the third trait of top players has to do with two sides of the same coin. So we'll start with not giving people too much credit. Now, I think there is a connection between how you play poker and your personality. My style of poker is considered extremely aggressive, which you guys might find a bit odd watching me since I'm not an aggressive person at all. My communication style is more reactive and cooperative. I see what the other person wants and I react off of that. Often it's easier for me to see what other people want than to understand what I want myself. Now, years and years ago, I played a heads-up match for practice against one of my students, and he later told me I was by far the most aggressive player he'd ever encountered, and he felt like he was constantly under attack in every spot. And I think generally a lot of my opponents have considered me hyper-aggressive, both in poker and in other games I've played. Now, the reason for this on my end isn't me being inherently aggressive. It's rather that I base my plays on what my opponent's mistakes or leaks are. And I'm very accurate and very consistent in the way that I do that. So if someone gives me a reason to think that he's going to fold too much, I'm going to bet. And in poker, people tend to give you those reasons quite a lot. Now, it's not me really being aggressive. It's just me playing the natural counterpart in my opponent's over-folding style. Now, if you look at someone like Doug Falk as a counterpart, he's a much more extroverted, high-confidence guy. And that fits well with a GTO game plan, right? He's going to do things his way. His way is the right way. And he doesn't need to pay attention or react to you because his game plan is inherently stronger. I think different styles of games fit different characters, even within the game theory versus reactive exploitative styles. You could have a confrontational exploitative style or a non-confrontational one. And this is connected to terms I call hard exploiting and soft exploiting. A soft exploit style, or a non-confrontational style, is one in which I'm constantly exploiting you. I'm looking for your mistakes, but I'm never doing it in a way where you can really find out what's going on. So the way I do this is by exploiting you in ways that don't convey information. So I might bluff you with 100% of my combinations that are good to bluff, whereas theory would say I only get to do it 60% of the time. But I'd never bluff with a combo that's theoretically bad, since if you caught me, the jig is up, so to speak, and we get into what's called a leveling war. Now, with a soft exploit style, I don't want to get into any wars with anyone. I want to fly under the radar, take advantage of people's mistakes without them knowing. A hard exploit style, much more confrontational, would be to take every spot to the max, and to trust yourself that once your opponent notices what you're doing, which is often quite fast with this kind of style, you'll be able to wing it on your feet better than they can. This style was played by one of my close friends starting out, and I think it's also more the style of Charlie Carroll. It's sort of a, I'm gonna push as hard as I can, and what are you gonna do about it kind of style. Now, back in the day, one of the students in my group was an extremely intelligent and hardworking guy who was underperforming, and it wasn't clear to anyone why. Now and then I'd have a one-on-one coaching session with him, and invariably I'd notice that he made some fairly big mistakes in big pots. Now, what I classify as a mistake isn't the classic definition. I'm very practical in my coaching, and when I asked him, why did you call this huge river raise in this spot? He would always answer a very intelligent, thought-out answer. It included combo counting and theory and not getting exploited. And I'd counter with something along the lines of, look, you're playing a $100 buy-in cash game. This is a spot that you're not capable of finding bluffs in. This guy is someone who you have tagged as nitty and unimaginative. He's certainly not capable of finding bluffs here, and I'm not sure if anyone is. So stop imagining you're playing against a computer and just fold. Now, after every session we'd have, this guy would go on to have the best month of his life. And then his game would slowly but surely degrade down the same lines it had before of giving people too much credit. Over time, he improved, he grew out of this, and he started winning, but it took quite a long time. Now, I've come to realize over the years that through poker, we get to live a version of our outside life within the game. It's a great therapeutic and character-building tool in a wonderful, twisted, gambly, magical kind of way. And what comes very naturally to me, which is looking at other people and what they're doing to find the correct path to act, is kind of the antithesis of how a lot of other people approach the world. And of course, even for me, with my natural inclination, as I moved up stakes, I constantly made the mistake of thinking that this time people are going to be really good, they're going to know everything, my tricks aren't going to work. And inevitably, I'd give them too much credit, and things would get a lot harder for me. The lesson here is going to be useful for some people, whereas others have it kind of naturally ingrained in their character, and the lessons they need to learn are different ones. But this is about characteristics of top players, and I think a really, really big one is not giving people too much credit. Now, the counterpart to this is giving people credit. I'm sure you guys have heard the phrase, "This guy's terrible, there is no way I can lose to him unless I get unlucky." And it turns out a lot of those terrible players actually do quite well for themselves. There was a guy who played the very high volume on PokerStars years ago named Calvin, and he would flat 3-bets with the most ridiculous hands, as far as 5-deuce suited or Jack-3 suited. And he kept betting pot-sized C-bets and 3-bet pots, and often ended up showing under pairs in various lines in which nobody else did that. Or go bet flop, check whole turn with ace-high flush draw, so all sorts of stuff that seemed very silly. And despite playing contrary to how everyone else did at the time, he actually did quite well. And in retrospect, it turns out that people were 3-betting too small a size, and once solvers came out and we checked, his ranges were actually fairly close to correct. Now, when I saw what this guy was doing before solvers, I examined it, I thought about it, and I tried it out for myself. And I didn't understand why it worked initially, but slowly got used to it and saw that it was actually fine. This approach of giving people credit might sound contrary to what I was just talking about before, so I want to put it in very accurate terms. Before, I was saying, don't give people credit for being able to do things that you haven't seen them do. And here the idea is, after you did see someone do something that seems wrong, give them the credit that they had a reason and try to find out if there's something that you're missing. So whenever someone would catch me bluffing, I always search for, did I give anything away? Was the spot bad? Was my sizing wrong? This curiosity towards the game is extremely valuable. Now, another player who was bad and did extremely well was Tim Stone. He grinded on PokerStars for years with extremely high volume, and his stats were, for lack of a better word, terrible. He'd overfold in every single node of the game, and all you had to do when you played him was bluff, 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 and every single one of your bluffs printed you money. But it turns out that versus the vast majority of players, overfolding was a pretty solid strategy. And even if Tim was playing far from optimal in this very basic sense of the game, he must have been doing something right, because he was winning quite consistently. So rather than deride his play, the correct move would be to examine it and ask the question, what can I learn from this guy? Now, very often the best players are considered terrible by all the bad regs as they're moving up in stakes. I can't count the number of times I've heard people flaming someone as terrible, only to later see him playing nosebleeds while they were stuck in the same place they started. To succeed in poker, you have to think outside the box, you have to be creative, you have to take risks, you have to make terrible plays. A professional who can play terribly is, believe it or not, much more intimidating than someone who's just playing normally. And even if your opponent's thought process wasn't good, you still want to be able to recognize and understand it. So if you play someone similar in the future, you can predict their actions better. Poker is a game with multiple layers and dimensions, and you label someone as terrible at your own peril. It's kind of yin-yang, right? On the one hand, don't give people credit. On the other hand, give people credit. But I really think you need a combination of both of these to succeed. And if you're lacking one of them, you're blind to an entire aspect of the game in which you can improve. So if you're sure everyone bluffs balanced and you just click call all the time according to GTO, you're missing out on a huge area of win rate. And similarly, if you assume whenever someone does something wrong, it's just because they made a mistake, you're missing out on another huge area of win rate and an area of discovery of what this guy is doing and what he's up to. So these two are both characteristics that are intermingled in the thought process of the top guys that I know. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.